All right, well, the engine is completely out, and I gotta say, removing the engine was way easier this time around than on my CRX. I felt way more confident and kind of knew what I was doing from having done it before. It came out really clean. The EG engine bay seems to have a lot more room than the EF chassis, so you know, it being a stock motor, once I removed the radiator and the AC, you know, there was plenty of room for it to come out. You can get a quick look at just how filthy the engine bay is. There are just piles of dirt backed up in corners. So I'm really looking forward to, you know, stripping this down further and continuing to clean this up. I'll probably strip this down, then I'll push the car all the way out to the end of the driveway, get the pressure washer out, and really clean this thoroughly. You can see the brake master cylinder is leaking. So that's going to be replaced. I also have a friend who's been in my ear about doing a brake line tuck on this to clean up the look of the firewall. But I'm not really gonna gain too much since I have to keep a lot of the other stuff on the firewall anyways for emissions purposes in California. So I'm not going to be able to lose, say, the charcoal canister or anything like that. So we'll see how far I want to take that down the line, but now it's out, and I do have the motor set up on a engine stand. I was able to pressure wash it yesterday and spray it down really thoroughly, and it cleaned up really incredibly well just with the pressure washer. I hope I didn't get water in places that I wasn't supposed to, but you know, I used plastic bags and taped off pretty much every inlet and every plug that I could. The only part that might have gotten a little water inside of it was in the inside of the transmission, but I'm probably going to break that open to do a little bit of a refresh and rebuild on it anyways. But here it is for now. Even all the, you know, wrinkle paint, factory powder coating just kind of blasted right off the surface. So, you know, that gets me one step closer to refinishing this with a nice clean surface as well. As far as the motor goes, you know, everything's going to have to remain relatively stock. I'm going to go through it and replace things that look like they might, you know, be on their way to failing. Obviously, all the rubber hoses and vacuum lines and radiator hoses potentially as well. We'll do a new flywheel and a clutch because when I drove the car for the first time, it definitely had basically no clutch left. The headers will probably have to remain stock again for California emissions purposes. I know the DC Sports headers are carb legal in California. That means they're 50 state legal. But what I don't understand about using headers like that is on the stock manifold setup, the catalytic converter comes right off of the headers before going into the downpipe. So, you know, for passing California emissions, I don't know if I can use a 4-into-2-into-1 header system and then actually replace the catalytic converter after the merges underneath the car, like most vehicles do have, like my EF CRX has. So if anyone knows about, passing smog in California while running like DC sports headers and moving your catalytic converter downstream a little further, please hit me up in the comments and let me know your experience with that. And here's the transmission pulled off and set over to the side. It's S20 trans. The code is J8B or P20. So this is the Honda CX model. I imagine it's geared way differently than, say, like an SI model from a similar year. It actually feels really nice to drive this with the 70 horsepower low-powered motor, but really long gears. It feels like the motor and the gearbox are very well matched for this car. So if I do keep stock motor and stock gearbox, I'm looking forward to driving it again. So I believe I will be replacing all of the motor mounts with a Hatchback setup. This engine actually had 5 mount points. It had rear, passenger, and driver side, but it also had 2 other engine mount points. One kind of coming off the front of the transmission. So there was a engine mount point here, and then another bracket that went here and also mounted to the chassis. And then there's the same thing, the AC bracket for this car actually has another mount point that comes off on the other side of the motor and attaches to the chassis. So I'm hoping if I go with just even street mount Hatchback mounts or street stiffness Hatchback mounts, I can get rid of those 2 additional brackets so I don't need to run them. It'll just make for a cleaner look under the engine bay, and hopefully it won't be any different. As far as the transmission goes, new clutch, new flywheel will be going in. We'll be replacing the throwout bearing and any other repairs that need to be made.